Hey guys, me Rob with Open Machine Works, and I wanted to take a few minutes to talk about a redesign I did on some fixturing. This was one of the first production fixtures that I had ever came up with to run in a Haas. Second one maybe. It was in service for close to three and a half years, and I recently started having problems with it. I was getting some vibration. I think they were getting a little loose on the base, maybe. They were just getting a little worn out. So, here just the other day, I did a complete redesign. I shouldn't say redesign. I did redesign them, but I made some changes, learned a few things, and I decided it might be worthwhile taking a few minutes to talk about it. So, originally, I did not extrude down any material to face off on the original Pearson pallet. So what you'll notice is I ended up with a lot of extrusion showing through. You can't see it because I've pushed material across it so many times, but this is the better of the two pallets. Some of the extrusion comes off into where the part's seated, and I was getting some inconsistency. And that's on top of making the second pallet like a year and a half after the original. So there's definitely some variances there. That was my first oversight. So on the new ones, you'll see they're all nice and shiny for now anyways. They're playing down to a consistent Z. The first thing I do now when I design any Pearson pallet, or any fixture for that matter, is I extrude 20 thousandths off the top. And then I design around that. But first thing, take 20 off. From there, the next change I made was on these Mighty Bite pockets. Originally, they were so tight, some of the Mighty Bites actually got bound up in there to begin with. Which, of course, is problematic as far as clamping and unclamping goes. But even after I opened that up, chips would get stuck in there. And I'd go to move my hand across it to like brush some chips off, and I would slice the side of my finger open. I couldn't tell you how many times that happened. So the next thing I did was open the pocket with them. They don't look nearly as integrated and clean looking, but they are much, they don't collect chips. I'm not cutting myself anymore, or at least I shouldn't. I've only been running these for 6 hours now in production. So that's a bigger thing than a lot of people realize, and you'll still get caught up here, but they didn't seem to get caught in the Talon grip all that often. Next big change I did was, a while after making the parts, the customer ended up adding a recess on this edge, which moved the whole part to the X, over an X a little bit. So I was able, now that I redid them, I was able to reposition it so I can use the original Mighty Bite clamps rather than having to make my oversized Mighty Bite clamps. So if these ever need replaced, I can just buy an off the shelf one. Not that it was that big of a deal. I made like 20 of these or something, and I never needed more after that. So it wasn't a big deal, but it's just one of those things that if you don't have to worry about it, it's nice. Another big change I made was originally the pallet was, I broke the center of the pallet itself, which on its own is bad for a number of reasons. Bored in these holes, and then these holes are what I use to locate the geometry. What I've been moving to is probing the, pardon me, there's a bore, I can tell you it's about right there, that the Pearson base locates to the Pearson pallet with. So I now reference that pin, as I should have done originally, but I made a blunder early on that kind of led me to make some bad downstream decisions that I'm trying to move away from now. and it means I kind of have a mixture, but as I redo those old fixtures or phase them out, I'm moving away from that. So I still added that bore in, but it's now a known distance in X and Y away from that pin. But I'm still referencing off of that pin. So in theory, I can reference any pallet off of that pin, and it will get me close enough that it will make parts and probably not crash anything. Worst case, a chamfer's on up to or something like that. Trying to think if there are any other big changes from there. Pockets are a little cleaner. You can see really tight radii, unchamfered. These are raw edges. These are much cleaner radii, chamfered nicely. The only thing I would have liked to have done is quarter rounded these edges, but I don't have enough travel, which is unfortunate, but it also is what it is. I'd be interested to run an indicator over these, because just rubbing my finger on it, I can feel there's a little bit of a dip where I used to run these things in. So that is also kind of interesting. That lead me to another thing. I used to just thread the pallets to 832 and run the Mighty Bites into that. What would happen is those threads would fatigue over the course of months, weeks, months, years, and I'd be going to torque one down, and you'd get that righty-tighty, righty-loosey sensation. Then I'd have to undo all the threads, flip the material because the Mighty Bite's now bitten into it and has no more stroke to it. Drill it, tap it for the, 5/16, 18. Throw an insert in it, Loctite it, get it to depth, and be back on my way, only for that to happen on the next thread that I torque. I had that happen 4 times in a row on a fixture for me once, which was a last straw. I now design fixtures to be to receive threaded inserts. I use the Easy Lock. Yeah, got one right here. I use these Easy Lock threaded inserts, McMaster-Carr, readily available on McMaster-Carr. Comes in a 10-pack, and I buy tons of these things. If I'm ordering something on McMaster, I will usually throw a bag of these on until I have too many of them, and then I forget that I'm out of them 2.5 years later and have to panic order some and drive around all the auto parts stores. Not saying that happened, but it definitely happened. There are just so many minor things I changed. Like, these parts were kind of arbitrarily out in space. I kind of cinched them down and they are now in a known location. Well, I guess the parts are kind of in an arbitrary location, but the Mighty Bite pockets, this center line to the edge, that to that edge, that's now known. These pocket distances are now standardized. They're a little bit different than here. They were close, but not quite close enough. Not that it hurt anything, but I like knowing that position. These pockets are now machined to a nominal. 4878, I believe. Machined within a couple tenths. If you trust the probes, I do, because I was able to get a gauge block down in there perfect. Or a gauge stack, I should say. I trust it within a couple tenths. Which is a little backwards. Typically you'd machine the parts, but because I know these are an enclosure and it doesn't matter, it's really easy for me to drive the size of the parts compared to the pallet, which is kind of a one and done thing. So yeah, I know it's backwards, but that's how it is, that's how I'm doing it, cry about it. Which I'm sure at some point I'll realize I was wrong, and I should have gone backwards from that, but hey, they get powder coated, nobody cares what the OD of them is. I feel like that was leading me to somewhere else. Oh yeah, being more comfortable as a machinist, and I'm reluctant to call myself a machinist, but I've been doing this for 4.5 years now. I've bought essentially 3 machines now. I'll call myself a machinist. I just kind of scrunched things down a little bit. It took a little over 12 inches of material on this old fixture to get just a little bit past the Talon grips, which I like. I like going just a little bit past, not right on the edge. I scrunched these down to basically being right on the edge. I don't have another ½ inch of material. So it's like 11.8 or something like that instead of 12. Cutting it a little closer to the talons, but not touching. Clearance is clearance. That sounds nice. What else? A change that I could have made back on these original pallets that I, for whatever reason, didn't, is something. This is incredibly stupid looking back. I'm not sure why it took me this long to realize this, but these tabs leave just a little bit of a ledge on the bottom side here that I can't quite clean up just because of XY variation. So I'd take it over to the Scotch-Brite wheel. I would finish that off. Would take me about 20 minutes to do 40 sets, 80 pieces. I just made a change to where these have always gotten roughed out, and then I run a finish pass to hit the outer sides. Now what I do is I leave myself a nice big beefy tab on roughing, but then on finishing, where I'm only taking like 5 thousandths, maybe 6, I take that tab right down to 30 thousandths, and for the most part, that quarter rounder takes it right off. In fact, that's the tool that you just heard that horrible chatter on. That's something I need to address. And see why that's happening now. But I no longer have to take it to the Scotch-Brite. I take these parts off, dry them, put them in a box, and take them up to the customer to where they get washed, tumbled, and powder coated. In opposite order. Less powder coated. So a ton of just little quality of life changes, process changes, things that could have been done better. But when I designed this pallet, I had hardly had my Tormach for a year. I was still in my basement when I was working on designing this revision. So it is kind of interesting to me to see the hindsight changes that you make. Excuse me. And now I'm building things in, like the chip fan is going to be built into the program. I don't think I'm going to run that from a sub anymore. I might. In fact, that's what's being pulled up right now. About to get noisy. By the way, Haas closes out at 9,000 max RPM and 12. The fan itself says 12, so we're running at 12. I'm going to be building in an inspection macro that every 20 parts, so 10 cycles, 20 parts, it kind of pokes around and makes sure that things aren't moving too much on me. I might build something in so I can flip a macro variable from a 0 to a 1 or something, and just run one set of each, because I could use a scrap piece of material, or a remnant I should say, to do that. And that is something the customer asks once in a while, is, hey, we lost one of these or whatever. I probably may as well just run 2 at that point and set 1 off to the side. But I don't know. I'll have to think about it and see what makes sense. But these have been the ramblings of me. See what the cycle time is on these now. Okay, so I need to figure out. I gained 2 minutes somewhere on this. The old cycle's 18 minutes, these are 20. Gonna have to look into that, that's frustrating. It could be, what could that be? It could be in the roughing. I've slowed down the facing a little bit until I'm comfortable that the Mighty Bites are getting a good grip. And I've slowed down the roughing a little bit until then. That's no good. So I always want to have the camera going. Got just a little bit of nastiness there. Oh, I know what that is. I need to change a spot depth so when it taps it doesn't raise a burr. I'll bet the part's sitting a little proud because there's 4 burrs there on each hole. Yeah. That's gotta be what that is, or there's a chip under it. I didn't clean it out well enough. Not a huge problem for these parts. They get tumbled, but it's not a big deal. But I like to make the parts come out as, I guess, as high quality as I can, as finished as they can be. But these are, they need to reach a certain price point, and I need to be able to hit a certain volume of them a week, work backwards from there. By the time they're powder coated and everything, you can't see any of these mill marks. There's no burr. It just looks like a nice case. So it's okay to work backwards. Not everything has to be a Grimsmo level process and fit and finish out of the machine. I do have some parts I try to do that with, but these are not them. Well, thanks for listening to my ramblings. Hopefully you maybe get something out of that. It's kind of, there's a lot of things I could have done better on, and it's a fairly simple thing, but it is a culmination of 3 years plus, 4 years plus, really, worth of experience. I've been making these things for quite a while. Take it easy.